Welcome back to another episode of On the Subject. I'm your host, Michael Vilardo, co-founder and CEO of subject.com. You know where to find us. And we're really excited because we continue our highlights of innovative educators. And we're in New Mexico, the land of enchantment, where there's so much innovation happening every single day. And we have an incredible educator. And this is unique for us because we've really been mostly highlighting superintendents and teachers. We have someone at a cooperative who has such a vast impact across the state and specifically in her region in the Southwest. And so really excited to be able to welcome today Valerie, Executive Director of the Southwest REC. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much. And so, we all love education. We're all here for different reasons. Tell us your story. Why do you love education? What makes you so happy about it?
Oh my gosh, there's so much to education. Well, first of all, education is the crux of everything.
Absolutely
we're only
agree.
going to get what we put out in this world, so it's so important that we get it right in the world of education, in K-12 especially. And I know you had Vicky Chavez on earlier, and she talked to you about this not being her first profession. It wasn't mine either. But I was led to be in education because I realized how important it was to just the United States and the world in general.
Well, so what were you doing first? Tell us more.
I was working with a traveling power line construction company.
Wow, very cool. So were you traveling the storms? Were you a storm chaser or no?
No, I was an office manager parts runner for a construction company that was building power lines across the western part of the United States. So they built some really big, like Denver Airport was just being built, and the company I worked with built the power line for that.
And so were you in New Mexico at the time, or what part of the country were you in?
I was in Arizona when I first got hired on, but then we built lines in Northern California and in Oregon and in Nevada and Utah and
Oh, so you've been all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
So what brought you to New Mexico? What brought you here?
Our final job, my husband and I had the final job. There was a small power line in Tierce, New Mexico. And I had gone 3.5 years at Arizona State University, had changed my major 3 times, took the gap year, and decided I needed to go back to college. And so we just decided New Mexico was where we wanted to settle, and ended up looking in the phone book and calling around, finding out where the cheapest tuition was, and went back to college.
And where was that?
At Silver City, New Mexico, Western New Mexico University.
I love it. Hey, shout out Western New Mexico University. Look at the incredible impact you had on an incredible educator. And, that's what I was talking about, the butterfly effect in education. You impact one person, they impact 10 people, those people impact 10 people. So you get to millions of students that impact every year. And so love what education can do for everyone. So you talk about being able to come back in education, especially after working with the power linemen. Really cool, be able to have that diverse career experience. What was your first job in education?
Ironically, I graduated with an elementary degree. Yeah. But at that time, it was highly competitive to get jobs, and I wanted to work in Silver City. And the only position open was the school that I student taught at, and it was special education. And so I went in for the interview, and I thought, well, at least there'll be experience. There's no way they're going to hire me. And I got hired for that job. And so I walked into a job that I had no experience with, had no clue about, and that was my first job in education.
That's beautiful. And, I think there's such a need to invest more resources and more time into special education. And now they're saying that the amount of students that require an IEP, it continues to grow by the day. What were you able to learn in that experience, helping students be able to learn and giving them a better opportunity and getting them more focused, individualized plans?
Well, what I'm going to say might be a little controversial.
That's good. That's good for the podcast.
I believe that we are actually over-identifying students in special education, that we're putting students who happen to be struggling and educators that are maybe not as well trained, don't know what to do with these kids. And so we figure, we need to send them to special ed. Those are the people that fix them or have the magic wand or whatever. And we have fewer qualified special education teachers in education, period, than we have anywhere else. But we're misidentifying students who are struggling that need interventions, early intervention, as special ed, because there's a certain criteria for special ed. But if we continue to do the things that we've always done and not really understanding the criteria, then we're over-identifying these kids. And I truly believe once you put a label on kids, special ed, L's, whatever, we isolate them with the best intentions, and we're holding them back rather than helping them.
I love what you had to say about, because your identity, especially as a young person, but even throughout your entire life, it shapes how you view yourself, shapes how you love yourself. or don't love yourself. And so your identity is so important to the way that you approach your life. Talk more about the ELs. Really interested in that. I grew up in an EL household. Our entire company, we're all Latino founders. And we have a big passion for EL education. What have you seen in New Mexico do so well across bilingual literacy and all these other incredible adoptions? I feel like New Mexico is one of the big leaders in that.
Well, my husband was an L too. He actually, his family came over from Cuba when Castro had
Oh,
taken
beautiful.
over.
Love it.
But the way they managed that was he was put back a grade because he didn't speak English. And so that's how that was managed at that time. But now I see, again, I see students that speak a different language. If we don't know how to deal with them in our general education classroom, we end up labeling them as special education. Sometimes we're looking at speaking a different language as a disability, which it shouldn't be.
Not at all.
But we actually have to train our teachers to be able to work with all of the students in their classroom, because you're not going to have a classroom that has just English-speaking kids or kids that are right on grade level. We have to be able to differentiate instruction. We have to be able to understand what that even looks like. What are the areas we could differentiate? Our Ls definitely need the support with, I happen to have seen your trailer for subject.com. The Realia, show me what it is. Help me to learn those words. Help me to figure out, let me talk more in the classroom. Don't keep me looking at a worksheet at my desk and looking at a bunch of words that I still don't know how to say, don't know how to use in conversation with my peers, and then try to use them academically. I mean, we have to allow all of these experiences so they can be immersed in what the learning is.
Yeah, so we had a really unique experience. We were in Northern California at a district, and they had a bunch of Russian and Ukrainian refugees. And they came to us, and this is about a year ago now, and said, hey, these students, they're not even literate in their own language. They're not graduating. They're dropping out. It's obviously, most importantly, it's bad for the student, but also for the district. The graduation rate suffers, the enrollment and attendance suffers. What could we do to help them? And so what we really focus on, say, hey, let's make this available in their native language, and not just dubbing, actually matching the lips, matching the cognates, like all this is a platform. And so now we've taken a pretty innovative approach, I think, where it's like, hey, we enroll our student, if they're an EL, in their native language, so Spanish, Arabic, whatever language it may be, and the English version. That way they could learn both. But our hypothesis is, if you do better in school and go farther in your education, your chances of developing your English skills will be higher rather than wanting to drop out. My co-founder actually, so I'm Colombian, he's Mexican. And he's an incredible guy. Ended up going from LAUSD to Harvard, great guy. But his two older siblings both dropped out of high school because they didn't know English. And see, that's the opportunity that we're robbing from these kids by forcing them into these environments where they're just not going to be successful.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And I'm thinking back to what you're saying. I'm glad you're not dubbing, because it reminds me of the old school Gamera movie.
Oh, like Godzilla, yeah.
Look, it's not here.
Yeah. Oh, it's so gone. I can't watch that.
I'm not listening to what they're saying. So absolutely. And it needs to be, if you want people to engage, they have to feel like they belong. They have to feel honored. They have to feel like this is important as well. And we're seeing, people think New Mexico, they're Spanish speakers is the language. We have multiple Native American tribes. We have people that speak Spanish, and we have, like every other state in the United States, people coming in from all different countries. And it's not just learning the language. It's if they're coming from war-torn countries, like you had mentioned, some of them aren't literate in anything because some may have never come to school. Some just survived. And so we have to we just have to have so many skills in education now. SEL is a big thing, but we just have to be able to understand where people come from. And that's, it's honoring the language, but also honoring where they are in their learning journey and being able to help. You're a third grader in a third grade class. We don't want to have to put you back with first graders because your peers are third graders. What can we do to move you along and to make your acquisition of language and learning happen quicker?
What would you like to see in SEL? I love that approach. You're absolutely right. And I think that was one of the biggest, in my opinion, impacts of the pandemic, is a lot of stunting of development. Because think about it, if you're, an adult, 1-2 years of your life, it's a smaller percentage of your time living. But if you're a 10-year-old and you spent 2 years with limited social interaction, that's a lot. I mean, that's nearly 20% of your time on this earth. And so that that can affect a person. Like, how can we make SEL better?
And I think SEL is another one of those things where we feel like it's just, or we're using it as just making us feel better.
Yeah.
That's one part of it. But how do we feel better? We feel better when we're more confident in what we're able to do. And that's what SEL really is about, is that student who was isolated for 2 years and never learned what it was like to stand in line with other kids, what it was like to share on a playground, what it was like to have to work independently or work with a group. All of those things are what SEL encompasses. It's what's your self-awareness? What's your social awareness? How are you working to mitigate your own anger and those kinds of things? So it manifests itself in how we feel, but we have to build these skills and confidence, really what SEL is all about.
I love it. I completely agree. Educate our learners and educate me on what exactly is this cooperative setup in New Mexico. I know Texas has it as well, but not every state has these.
Right.
I grew up in Illinois and Michigan, so I never heard of a cooperative till we started working in New Mexico a little over 2 years ago now. What's a cooperative, and what is like your whole goal and vision with your cooperative?
Great question. They have been in New Mexico since 1984. And they were basically established at that time because New Mexico was the holdout state that didn't accept the money for special education. And finally, the federal funds came to education and they had to figure out a way to get them distributed across the state. So that's basically how the regional education cooperatives in New Mexico were established back 40 years ago. And there are 10 of them in the state, and they're all regionally, and we're in the Southwest. And the districts become members. We have 8 member districts that encompass all the schools in the Southwest corner. And you're absolutely right about what you said. Every one of the RECs has a different POV, and it's really based on what your districts are looking for. Our superintendents are basically our board of education. They're our
Very cool.
managerial
Yeah.
council. And so we're at the behest of what do our districts need. And our districts have really requested that they want a lot more support for instruction and teachers and what's happening in the classroom. And so we really take a point of view of ensuring that we're bringing the right kind of training in. We're bringing a lot of training around special education for the teachers and the directors. And we're about to launch some math training for teachers, because we're bringing in these people with degrees that are ready to be in front of kids but really don't understand pedagogy. And, they may be a good mathematician but don't really understand what it takes to teach math and what are math practices and those kinds of things. So that's what our districts really want us to do, is really help them support the education in the schools.
So when you were able to be in this cooperative and you talked about the superintendents or like the way that they're able to be a managerial board of sorts, how do you manage your board? I think that's something that everyone wants to get better at. How do you manage a board so successfully?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm very lucky and blessed that I have school leaders that are actively involved in their schools. They're right in the game. They're as expansive thinkers as I would like to be, or, think that I am. And so I have a board that's really easy to work with. Their number one goal is to make sure education for the kids in their districts are happening. And as long as I'm doing that and meeting that need with them, we're more like partners than they're the board and I'm working underneath.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think managing
It
your
really
board is such an important leadership skill, and, selling them on your vision, getting them excited about things, being able to handle fires together, super important. And it's a great way for us to be able to get better as leaders and help education get better every day. And so, when you talk about technology and education, have you worked with any digital curriculum in the past? And like, how do you view technology and education versus, 2010 to now, let's call it 2025 next year, that 15-year window, how much things have changed?
Well, as far as digital curriculum, our schools have used Edgenuity as like a credit recovery program or those kinds of things. Other than that, I really haven't seen technology used in the way that it could be used. I've seen it used more as the medium rather than the tool to get to the learning. I think, especially after COVID, I still see a lot of classrooms where I walk in where kids are opening computers at their desks and getting on the LMS platform we use in New Mexico is Canvas.
Yeah.
And so we load things on Canvas. And so the kids access Canvas. And so they're still kind of working alone on a computer when they're in this classroom and could be doing so many other things or doing it in such a different way. And so I would love to see technology used in a much better way. It can be used as a tool. It could be used as I'm a believer in AI. Why don't you embrace it and allow kids to use AI?
They're going to use it in their jobs.
Absolutely. Yeah, we all use it.
Yeah.
We've depended on it. I mean, what do we think that when we're saying Alexa, that we
Or
use it
Siri.
every
Yeah,
day?
that was AI for years. And it's funny that nobody, I love that. See, you're smart. You got this. I completely agree with stuff like, oh, yeah, I came out of nowhere. It's like, you've been using it for years, just nobody has talked about it. And I think you hit such a, technology could be so much more innovative. And, we talk about Netflix turned 27 years old this year. Netflix is 27 years old.
I remember when they used to mail you the CDs.
And these kids have grown up with Netflix, Instagram, YouTube. Now they have TikTok. We need Snapchat. Technology needs to look more like that in the classroom and less like, the late 90s, early 2000s. You got the AOL broadband, the weird sound going on. So, no, we're just trying to really figure out how we can better support educators, how we can make students be even more ability to fall in love with learning. And that's what it's about all the time and every day. And, so the way we do always wrap these is by being able to bring back you connecting with your younger version of yourself. When you entered education, so you went from power lineman, being able to work in that industry and being able to help those incredible cities grow with the infrastructure that's needed to power the cities. And not many people realize that. To going back to school, to getting into education. What would you tell your younger self if you were to speak to them today?
I would just say that anytime an opportunity came to learn, jump on it. Because I truly think things are changing so quickly. If there was an opportunity to attend a workshop or to go to a training or to observe another classroom, another school, if you're able to do that, because there's so much to learn out there. And if you're going to be in front of kids, it's your obligation to know as much about the world as you can to back what you're doing in front of kids.
It's all about the kids. Always centering kids. And where can we find you on social?
I'm on Instagram and
it's all good. Low profile.
And I'm on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn and Instagram.
I mean, I read all of them, but you're not going to see a whole lot of posts from me. But
LinkedIn and Instagram, you can find her there. And again, this is another episode of On the Subject. Our goal is to highlight innovation in education. We're so indebted to these incredible leaders sharing their stories, and it's all about helping the kids. Find us on YouTube and Spotify. Click below, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. So much fun.
Thank you. It was fun. Appreciate it.